He had his gun, so he just swung it open.
I start to notice that, the atmosphere feels a little bit weird.
First thing he seen was this 6.5 foot tall, broad shoulder, dark hair. That freaked him out.
We hadn't talked to her about like life and death and what any of that means. She's 3 years old,
So we turned around. Suddenly there's a whole tree falling across the road.
And she was describing to us that, there was a deceased person that she could see visually.
You're listening to Cryptid Clues, where we tackle the ever-expanding history and mystery of monsters and supernatural madness every Monday. You can find us at CryptidClues.ca for more information, or even check out exclusive content and support us at patreon.com/CryptidClues. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cryptid Clues. I'm your host, Reuben, followed by your other also host, Taylor. Taylor, what are we talking about today? Because I have no idea.
Well, we're talking about energies and electricity that is kind of associated with living beings. And this kind of comes inspired from a Viking Skull. Shoutouts to you. You are a frequent Cryptid Clues YouTuber. You leaving comments, liking the videos. Shoutouts to you. You're an awesome person. And you left a fantastic comment the other day on our recent episode, and we were really looking at it. And when I was kind of just going through it, I was starting to think like, maybe this is something to talk about. Talk about how energies and electricity kind of can connect into cryptids and just animals and even ourselves. So that's kind of what the focus is of today's episode. We might branch off into a little bit of paranormal stuff too, but we'll see where we go. So the first thing I wanted to highlight was that yes, animals, they produce electricity, and we're going to talk about that after, but we talk about humans producing energy. Now, Reuben, do you know how many watts of output a human body can generate at rest?
Enlighten me.
100 watts,
What?
which is enough to oh my god, that's enough to power up a light bulb, which is intriguing because that's what Uncle Fester does in the Addams Family. So I guess there's a little bit of truth to that when you think about it.
Is that how they do the magic trick where the guy pulls out a light bulb and he's like, he licks his finger and twists his finger a couple times and then boom, the light bulb's on as he holds it?
I mean, I've never lit a light bulb in person, but I think they're playing off of that scientific fact. You just have to have a way of conjuring that electricity.
A battery hidden in your sleeve?
Well, yeah, there you go. Sleeve battery. Now, this wattage actually can increase based on the human activity. So 100 watts is at rest. Now, some humans have been able to hit, like, on average, I'd say 300, 400 watts when they're engaging in sport activities. But in rare cases, some humans have been able to hit an output of over 2,000 watts while sprinting. So I'm thinking these guys are like your Olympic athletes, like that tier. So for comparison, 2,000 watts could power up a cell phone charger, a laptop, a toaster, coffee maker, a small to medium-sized refrigerator. You might even be able to get away with an air conditioner, a dishwasher, or a laundry machine with that. It's quite something. And it made me think of how robots are harvesting humans for... it's for energy. When you think about the Matrix, I just can't remember what specific type of energy. I think it's the same energy that the sun, because they were solar operated robots. And so that kind of energy comes from humans as well. But it's been a while since I've seen those movies. Now, some animals are well known to be producing electricity. I'd say eels, for example.
The electric eel came to mind. That was the first one that I thought of.
That's right. That's exactly right. It's in a much more condensed and focused output. Now they can hit a shock output of about 500 watts. So that's pretty potent.
Can't make light of that.
No, I was trying to
shocking.
look into I was trying to look into how they can get away with producing that in an external way of self-defense without really causing themselves harm. And I think the main consensus is that they have a lot of kind of fats that's kind of protecting their organs on the inside. So while they charge that up, it protects them from being injured themselves. But it's enough, to really cause harm to, or not like kill, but definitely freak out and send a predator running. Now, bullet point mode. There's electric catfish, electric rays. Those are your manta rays, whatnot. I think it's manta rays. There's a many variety of rays in there, and I'm not a
Give me a ray of hope here.
I'm not a great marine biologist, so I don't know all of the rays, but I know that there are some electric rays. Oriental hornets, stargazer fish, sharks, and geckos. Now, you are somewhat of a, I'd say a aficionado, because you don't have geckos, but what do you have?
I have a leopard gecko.
Oh, it's a leopard gecko? Okay. So,
Yeah, he's dry and a lump of sand. He's not electrifying at all. I hope not. I don't want to find out.
Does your
He is yellow though, so like Pikachu-like.
Does your gecko climb walls?
No. My leopard gecko belongs to a family of geckos that do not have sticky feet. They don't have little folds on their feet, so they don't stick to surfaces. They have claws. So he does love to climb, but he climbs like a cat would climb by using his claws.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, maybe you can elaborate this, because what I found with geckos is with their feet, they use static electricity. Basically, the electrons leave geckos' feet that create a positively charged gecko walking on a negatively charged surface. And that's how they can get away with walking on walls. Is that right?
Yes. It's not like a suction cup. They have little folds on their feet. That has something to do with it, like you mentioned. And they also have, like Velcro almost, how you have those two things that stick together. There's something with the shape of the pads of their feet and the way it's folded that it helps them stick to a surface. I don't know. I'm pulling this out of the bottom barrel of my memory here because this isn't something relevant to my lizard.
Well, you're very well informed, though. That's brilliant. Now,
very loosely informed.
Loosely well informed.
Loosely.
I mentioned sharks. Now, the skin itself is a very special type of skin, and it's basically connected to a bunch of electrosensory cells through a long jelly-filled canal. And so any external electrical fields that cause negative electrical charges, they begin to accumulate on the surface of the skin's pores. Now, every living thing can produce an electrical field, and we talked about humans earlier. Heartbeat, muscle movement. Now, sharks can basically detect this. That's why they see people swimming and they see fish swimming along, and they can detect that electrical frequency. So it makes sense, as they are fantastic predators. In some studies, a shark could actually detect the difference in electricity when two AA batteries got connected up to 10,000 miles away. Now, it's not every shark. It's just in some studies that they were talking about stuff like that, which is pretty incredible. So people talk about how a shark can smell blood miles and miles away. Well, it's the same for electricity and if you're moving and got your heart pumping and whatnot. So it's pretty
doesn't
crazy.
Surprise me. We've got tons of animals that can see rays of light and stuff that humans can. You've got UV rays, animals that can see in UV. Birds see more color than we do. A lot of species of birds see apparently something much more vibrant. My HDR TV doesn't get me anywhere near close to what a parrot can see. But I'm just repeating what I've heard. I'm just parroting it.
You just set yourself up. You know exactly where you're going and just set yourself up for the pun.
Yeah, it's a self setup.
So I wanted to kind of transition this into Bigfoot and electrical fields. So let's say if they had the functionality of a shark, what a shark is capable of, maybe their skin has the functionality of detecting electrical frequencies or charges that are in the not too distant area. So basically this would make them exceptional at avoiding living things when you think about it. Make them really, really good predators too. And if we look at cameras, now cameras do output a small electrical charge, or current, I should say. And it's, at its most basic level, a camera sensor is a solid state device. And this is basically absorbing particles of light through millions and millions of light sensitive pixels. And it converts those pixels into an electrical signal. Now these signals then get translated by the camera's computer chip, and that produces the image itself. So basically it's taking all that light, absorbs the light, and turns them to pixels and signals that into an image. So maybe if Bigfoot has this shark skin ability, that's how they can detect cameras, especially in a remote area. Now, I'm just hypothetically spitballing this. There is no other discussion on this type of thing that I have found online. This is completely hypothetical, but I just thought it was interesting to bring up because it's prominent and it is fact in the real world that sharks have this ability. So why wouldn't other animals be capable of something like this? And so if we're dealing with a remote area that has limited wildlife and you just have this small little camera just beaconing off and emanating an electrical field they can detect.
Now,
makes sense.
Counterpoint to that, because it's completely possible. We know nothing about Sasquatch, Bigfoot, whatever. It's a completely open discussion. You could be 100% correct, partially correct, or wrong. If we wanted to look at this from a very secular scientific worldview, why would an animalistic Bigfoot or even a human tribal Bigfoot evolve in such a way to develop a sense for electricity or electric fields? What benefit does that have through them? I would lean more comfortably towards Bigfoot or Sasquatch having some kind of a sense of energy, electric, whatever. That part doesn't matter much to me in a spiritual sense, because I would rather assume that some creature that's intelligent and human-like in some form is probably a little bit more connected to nature than us, may have some other form of DNA that we aren't aware of, angelic, demonic, whatever, what have you, could be a creature from wherever else, who knows, it's a cryptid. That would make more sense than to me that what it can or can't detect is completely unknown to modern science. That's also an open table discussion that we have no evidence for, and it's on equal footing with what you've brought up. However, what I would like to bring up, because we don't really have evidence for any of this, I would present evidence more in towards quantum mechanics and experiments that have been done on past episodes. You and I have talked about the random number generator experiment. Huge groups of people affecting a random number generator in various parts of the world. If they all assume a number is going to be higher or lower, more often than not, the number's higher. When, if it was truly random, that percentage doesn't really line up. However, I'm going to put that off to the side, and I'm going to talk about a couple of experiments that we really haven't brought up on the show. When it comes to energy affecting things, or even quantum mechanics, human energy being involved in the life around us, there's a couple of experiments that have been conducted in the quantum mechanics realm from a Japanese businessman. His name is Masaru Emoto, who is a pseudoscientist and an author. He claimed that human consciousness should be able to affect the molecular structure of water. His hypothesis was fairly unique, fairly pseudoscience-y. However, those experiments have been performed rather successfully, frequently enough that you can start to repeat them in the scientific sense, so it's repeatable evidence. What they found out, however, was more related to sound. If you have a glass of water and you spread that water out amongst multiple glasses, who cares, however many glasses you have, if you look at that glass and you talk softly to it and lovingly to it in whatever sweet, wispy human voice with no real thought or emotion behind it, the water molecules are affected by the sound of your voice on some level. Now, maybe human bias would pump that up if you actually care about it and say, oh, water, I love you. You're such a nice cup of water, as weird as that is. When they examine the molecules of the water in both of these instances, the molecules are smoother. They're a different shape than normal, than the cup of water from the same bucket that was completely separated from that human and that sound. So somewhere in that interaction, the molecular structure changed. Versus you take that glass of water, talk hatefully to it, say something negative, mean, angry, the molecular structure changes again in a presentable way that you can identify. If you keep up that same thing among any amount of glasses of water, that molecular structure consistently changes in the same way towards positivity or negativity. Now, in the exact same sense, if we were to take emotion out of this, music and sound and vibration have the exact same results. Classical music, something soft and lilting, gives the water a more smooth structure molecularly. You can examine it under microscopes. And then you look at it with rock and heavy metal and harsh sounding music, you get more of that more negative human speech approach to it, where now the structure of the water is harsher. That's an experiment that was repeatable, put forth by that Japanese businessman. They expanded this to rice. And you take rice, put it in 3 jars. They labeled a jar, love, labeled a jar, hate, and just left a jar, just neutral. Now, what they found was by constantly being around these jars and directing quote unquote energies at it, they found that the neutral jar of rice shelf life was as expected. The jar with hate labeled on it and them constantly directing some kind of negative human emotion towards it was moldy. The jar that they were liltingly lovingly to seemed to be perfectly fine, and it was still well beyond expiring or anything like that. I don't know how far they took it. We'd have to look up this experiment again and really see how valid it is. But I believe that it is a point to be brought up that on some level, human energy, sound, and vibration play a huge part in the creatures and people around us. Obviously, in a work environment, if you're uplifting and positive and you're happy with your coworkers, you lift everyone's moods up. That's just to be natural and expected. But if you walk in, you're upset, you're mad, you're angry, other people pick up on that and you can start to bring other people's moods down. That's just how humans react to each other, especially if you're an empath. Is there a spiritual side of that? Absolutely, I would think so. Is there a scientific side of that? Well, yes, on a molecular chemical level, we react that way with other human beings just because we're empathic. Put that into water and rice, however, it gets a little murkier. What's actually affecting it?
Expanding upon that, the human body is about 50-60% water. So if you're being kind and funny, you are having an effect on the water in someone's body. There's definitely something to that. And I actually remember watching a documentary on exactly what you said and seeing those experiments. And it is truly fascinating. It also reminds me of the actual kind of the theme of Ghostbusters 2, when they have this ooze underneath New York, and responding to it negatively creates a much more frowned upon entity that they're dealing with, but when they're kind to it and talk nice to it, then it's much more calm and relaxed and more kind in response. So that's interesting about the rice. I did not know that. So with humans having this ability, are you thinking that it can extend, and Bigfoot, let's say hypothetically, has this kind of a connection with many more things in a spiritual level?
I mean, look at any human being from hundreds of years ago. Native Americans would believe how you affect others, energy-wise, is important. Love and positivity versus hate and negativity, it has an effect on things. Scientifically, I mean, we'd really have to look at those studies, see how scientific they really were, look at where they really came from, because I'm quoting what I've heard. How valid is it? We've already studied some quantum mechanics stuff together on the show. We've looked up things in our own time. I have a sense of it. I think it's believable. I mean, they study it in college now. Quantum mechanics are brought up all the time in current science. So it's an expanding realm that's growing a lot when it comes to energy and how it affects things. But then go into a creature that's intelligent, isn't bombarded by human life, technology, and all that stuff going on around us. They're more connected to nature. They probably understand on some core concept that they affect things around them. Do I think that Bigfoot can cast energy, electrical stuff, have senses? I don't know. I don't think it has shark skin. But there's something there we don't know. We just go back to that open table discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't think they're necessarily walking around shark skin either. Just got the big fin on the back and flippers and all that.
You're swimming at the beach and you see the little shark fin, da-na-na-na, but it's actually Bigfoot, and he just comes up and grabs you by the legs and pulls you under.
No, thank you.
Gotcha.
I guess in closing, I'll cap off on a little bit of the paranormal, which, again, we're getting close to October, so I'm going to be doing a little bit more paranormal-centric stuff. So talking ghosts, atmospheric electricity, that's something that's always present. Thunderstorms, great example of that. But in general, an electrical current does always constantly exist in the air around us. It's I tried looking into this. I wasn't exactly sure because I'm not an electrician. A few micro amps per square meter. Do you know what that means, Reuben?
No.
No? Well, if you're an electrician and you're listening to this episode, then I hope you know what that means. But there is a lot of square meters on the Earth's surface. So that is a lot of electricity that's flowing through the air. But let's say you have specific hotspots of paranormal activity, and that's where you can see higher electrical frequencies, at least through the ghost hunting tech that's available to us. And if I was to get scientifical about it, the human brain itself can hold 12 watts of electricity. So if we were to basically have someone pass away, or that brain itself is no longer a factor, could that energy still, or electricity still exist without that physical casing? And souls and whatnot, that's up for debate. I don't know if there's probably more energy than electricity involved with something like that. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting to just kind of highlight that.
Actually, just to piggyback off that, because this is another thing that was kind of published as a study. I believe it was Duncan McDougall. This is back from 1907. They tried to hypothesize that souls have physical weight, and they attempted to measure the mass lost by a human when the soul departs the body. And they found that when people pass away, they constantly lost 21 grams upon the moment of death. I mean, if you die, your weight shouldn't change that quickly, and it shouldn't be the same weight every time. So it shows that there's something there, some form of energy physically leaving the table that weighs a human corpse.
Yeah, something to explore more on. I remember reading something about that, actually, now that you mention it. And it'll be interesting to see where this goes if we bring this topic back, talk more about demons and angels and whatnot, because that's a whole nother realm that involves
It's a whole nother
energies.
hornet's nest.
A whole nother hornet's nest, yeah. But until then, that's basically all I got for notes. Do you have anything in closing, Reuben?
That's all from me.
Okay. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning into this episode of Cryptid Clues. We'll be back next week. You can find us on our website, CryptidClues.ca. Send us an email, cryptidclues@gmail.com. And you can find us on our social media channels, X, YouTube, Facebook, and whatnot. But yeah, until then, ladies and gentlemen, take care and stay safe.
Bye-bye.